Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. Welcome to meditation class. For those of you who are new, if you go to YouTube, Meditation with Michael Imperioli, there are archived classes that have more extensive review on the meditation technique. We're going to be posting the first two classes of this year on YouTube pretty soon, and they have really extensive reviews. So if you haven't done that, we're not going to go through that every class, obviously, because most of you are returning students. We don't want to be use time just repeating that. So if you haven't done that, Jen, I would suggest watching that first. Of course, you can just sit and do your best without it. You don't have to leave. It's not a requirement. But we're going to meditate today. We're going to continue our study of 37 Practices of Bodhisattva with Victoria. She's going to help. I'm going to read something. Actually, I should have told you this. This book is called In Love with the World by Mingyur Rinpoche, Yangi Mingyur Rinpoche. And I wanted to share something that I thought was very interesting about ego, because we've talked about ego in this class. I always forget this sometimes. Let's say the 4 Immeasurable Prayers, which we do at the beginning of every class to set our intention and motivations. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion, anger and aversion. We talk about ego as a construct, as a compounded phenomenon that really is not something essential or something solid or something even real necessarily, as something we work with through the process of meditation to get a sense of how our mind works and what our ego is. But he talks about something very interesting. The term ego or ego self is frequently used to describe the self-centered fabricated outer layer of self, and we often speak of letting go of the ego, dissolving it, transcending it. However, the common usage of ego, both within Buddhist teachings and in the world at large, makes ego sound like an entity that has a shape and a size and that can be extracted like a tooth. It doesn't work that way. Ego is not an object. It's more like a process. That's the word that really nailed it for me when I read this. Ego is more like a process that follows through on the proclivity for grasping and for holding on to fixed ideas and identities. What we call ego is really an ever-changing perception. And although it is central to our narrative story, it is not a thing. It therefore cannot really die and cannot be killed or transcended. This tendency for grasping arises when we misperceive the constant flow of our body and mind and mistake it for a solid, unchanging self. We do not need to get rid of the ego because it never existed in the first place. The key point is that there is no ego to kill. It is the belief in an enduring, non-changing self that dies. The term ego can provide a useful reference, but we need to be careful not to set ourselves up for battling something that is not there. Ironically, when we go into combat with the ego, we strengthen the illusions of self, making our efforts to awaken counterproductive. Because ego is frequently identified in negative terms, especially among Buddhists, my father made a point of reminding me that we also have a healthy ego or a healthy sense of self. This relates to aspects of self that intuitively know right from wrong, that can discern between protection and harm, that instinctively know what is virtuous and wholesome. We trip ourselves up only when we become attached to these basic instincts and create inflated stories around them. For example, I had used ego in a positive way to explore and then maintain monastic discipline. But if I were to think, oh, I am such a pure monk, I maintain my vows so perfectly, then I would be in trouble. We talked about before, like having wisdom that can know, instinctively what is wholesome, what is productive, what is virtuous, right? Also, like Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's concept of basic sanity and decency. It's like, there is some intuition somewhere that does know right from wrong, that does discern protection from harm, that does know what is virtuous and wholesome and what is not. Meditation, that kind of practice gives you the space to where that wisdom can really take hold, take root, shine through, where you can act from that place and access that place much more frequently and much easier than when our mind is constantly in the grips of attachment, protecting the self, protecting the ego process, giving into it, feeding it, and all those things. So this is a good book to check out. It's about his Mingyur Rinpoche, is a incarnate Lama monk. His father was very well known and a wonderful teacher, and Mingyur Rinpoche has centers around the world and many students, and he kind of walked out and did a 3-year retreat as a wandering beggar yogi for 3 years, and didn't tell any of his attendants or followers that he was going to do it. And this book is about that experience. So let's meditate. Victoria, do you want to take us through the 9 breaths, purifying breaths? We're going to do the 9 purifying breaths and then go right into 9 minutes of meditation.
Good morning, guys. Good morning, everyone. So we do the Vajra fist. We put the thumb to the fourth base of the fourth finger. We close the Vajra fist and we hold it for all 9 rounds of breath. The important thing is that when we exhale, we connect the color to the emotion, to the poison that we are exhaling it. So on the inhale, have the intention with through my right channel, through my red channel, I am going to exhale desire, attachment, addiction, the wanting. Through my white channel, I am going to exhale hatred, aversion, irritation, things like that. And through the blue channel, we are exhaling the basic ignorance, the ignorance of dualism. We are exhaling selfishness, because selfishness is our dark mind. And we are exhaling it so that we can connect with everything. That is the last exhale of the blue channel, when we connect consciousness with space. So And on the third, we're exhaling through both nostrils, merging consciousness with space, air coming through our central channel through the crown.
Take that into 9 minutes meditation. I may talk a little through it. I may not. So remember, the key to this technique that we practice here, the techniques we practice here, is to become aware of what the mind is doing. Notice the fact that the mind is thinking and leaving the thought where it is without following it, without just rejecting it or pushing it away, noticing it, leaving it where it is. We can use that metaphor of a cloud, which has arisen in a stainless, clear, limitless blue sky. Cloud has arisen there, out of it, and dissolves back into it. Or the simple technique of going back to the breath, focusing on the place where if you're breathing through your nose, where the nostrils meet the top of the lip. Some of you may be able to just let it go using the technique of the mind looking at the mind becoming aware of what the mind is doing. That also can be enough. It might be a little harder. If you're working with the image of the sky, settle into that. The qualities of that sky, right? The clarity, the calm, the limitless potentiality of it. Or next time. Next time we can do that. Okay, Victoria is going to continue our practice of the study of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva by Gochu Togme.
Let's get the 37 Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
Good morning, guys. So the next six sections that are coming up in the 37 Bodhisattva practices are the extraordinary practices of the Bodhisattvas that are called Paramitas. This entire section from 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. These Bodhisattva these Paramitas are really, kind of like the virtuous actions, but taken to a very different level, meaning that they are informed by wisdom and they do transcend a certain level of ordinary mind. The sublime bodhisattva engagements, enlightened actions that are called the 6 paramitas: dana, generosity; shila, right conduct; kshanti, patience; virya, perseverance; dhyana, meditation; and prajna, wisdom. These 6 ways of engaging with the world are the proper bodhisattva conduct of being, of a being who has awakened and is motivated by compassion that is deeply grounded in the proper view of reality beyond dualism. And that's called prajna. It is, prajna means wisdom. That is the paramita number 6. And these 6 activities, the 5 activities with 6, the prajna, become paramitas. They become these transcendences only when they are engaged through the prajna, through the wisdom aspect. The body, speech, and mind of bodhisattvas. These are these 6 engagements, and it's beyond dualism. It's beyond the ignorant dualistic mind. Paramita is often translated as a transcendence or perfection. In Sanskrit, paramita is composed of para, which means beyond, the further bank or further shore or boundary, and mita, which means that which has arrived. So paramita means that which has arrived beyond, to the farthest shore. And very often we talk of the Buddha that way. We say, thus gone thus far, Tathagata, it's someone who went from the ordinary dualistic mind to the other shore. It's not like Michael was reading that the ego is something that's discarded or thrown away. The ego is something that is subsumed and transcended in the process of evolving the mind through the bodhisattva stages to Buddhahood. It's almost like if you think of the mind on a dimmer, it will go from dark, which is the ordinary dualistic mind, to switching the light on full blast, and Buddhahood being the absolute state of light. What do we mean by this beyond shore? What is this beyond, paramita? So this refers to the journey, the evolution of the mind, of course. A bodhisattva, body means awakened, is someone who awakens from the sleep of ordinary samsaric dualistic mind of afflictions. And due to this awakening, he wakes up or awakens the state of mind that's called bodhicitta, and that is love and compassion. So in Buddhism, it doesn't matter how scholarly you are and how much you know. That's just knowledge. It's something that you can put on the bookshelf. What matters, in terms of, Buddhist practice, is how much love and compassion you have, because that's direct realization of the view. If you have love and compassion, it means that the view has been taken birth in you. It's grounded in you. We do that through meditation practices and then application in life. These direct experiences is what makes us into Buddhist practitioners, into Buddhists, as opposed to Buddhist scholars, people who just store information. So a bodhisattva is someone who abandons the ordinary mind of I want this is mine, me, mine. And bodhisattva awakens on the other shore of wisdom that is understood as the union of the 2 truths. And we've been talking about it a lot, the ultimate and the relative truth. It is the wisdom that knows the way phenomena are, the way oneself is, as based on reality, not based on appearance and convention. We know that conventional truth is a series of arisings, momentary arisings, due to interdependence, karma, cause and effect. And these things that arise, they are there to basically stay for a little and perish. And so we know that the ultimate state of things is, empty. Armed with that view, a bodhisattva proceeds through the world beyond these craving and limitations of the I want this, because there's really no point when we know that these things arise to perish. We don't have to pursue and spend it and waste our life pursuing these kinds of things all the time. So as a result of this waking up to reality, Bodhisattva transforms his mind from the ordinary dualistic, ignorant mind that is based on the ego with its tentacles of afflictive emotions, to a mind which desires or needs nothing else but to end the suffering of all sentient beings here in samsara, and to bring them all in each and every one to the other shore, the para samsara reality. That's what it means, the paramita, to enlightenment. That is the other shore. Enlightenment is the other shore. Samsara is this place here with suffering, and we suffer because of our ignorance. We suffer because of we suffer the ignorance. We suffer the afflictions of afflictive emotions. We don't suffer things. We suffer the internal mechanisms by which suffering arises, and that's the ignorance and the afflictive emotions. It's that package, consciousness number 7. So that's the motivation of the bodhisattva, and it should be our motivation, as we are bodhisattvas in training. At absolutely all the times, we should cultivate that motivation and base our action on that motivation to attain liberation of enlightenment for ourselves in order to liberate all beings from samsara, and samsara being the endless cycle of suffering. You see, when a bodhisattva, out of his mind of awakening being bodhicitta, love and compassion, and prajna, the wisdom, looks out into the world, he may see a millionaire who needs his last million desperately because he wants to become a billionaire. Or he can look out into the world and see a woman who must buy her 100th pair of shoes, even if that means that tomorrow there's like no food for her family. Or a bodhisattva may look at a food addict who is possessed by thought of whatever he's addicted to, let's say, the next meal. To him, these 3 kinds of beings are all the same. A bodhisattva sees the multitude of karmic circumstances which account for the little varieties and differences. But mainly a bodhisattva sees the addicted, afflicted mind of all these 3 individuals as one and the same addicted, polluted mental state of afflicted mind, which is ravaged by desire and craving. And that's that mind of desire and craving, that afflicted mind, is the source of suffering, very intense source of suffering. The reason, the way that it looks different on the outside, that one guy is a millionaire and some middle-class woman and somebody may be a beggar, it's about their poverty mentality. It's about the mental affliction. And that's what the bodhisattva sees. And, one of our teachers used to always quote this phrase, this is a saying of the Buddha, it's not that phenomena bind us. It is our attachments that bind us. And the attachment is the seed of suffering. As long as we have the afflictive emotions, as long as we have ignorance, which is the basis of the afflictive emotions, the suffering never ends. So our focus in these bodhisattva practices is not on the outer appearance, but on the state of awareness, the inner element. Awareness is either free or it's in bondage and in pain as a consequence. It's either suffering or liberated. Each of these individuals suffers intensely the ravages of craving and addiction, desire, and so bodhisattva sees, or he looks out, and he only sees the inner reality, and he has an overwhelming desire to bring all these beings, all these 3 types of an individual beyond that afflicted state of mind, and to liberate them from their suffering. That wisdom, that is also equanimity, because bodhisattva has equal compassion for each and every being. He sees all these 3 beings as exactly the same. He doesn't care about their exterior circumstance. That's just the little minutia of our karmic differences, because karma is always mixed, nobody's just all evil, or, of course, Buddhas are all good, but, as for us, that's why we have all these differences, some people are born, with wealth, and some people are born with health and whatnot, this has to do with, previous karmic seeds. But the afflictions are the same for all of us. Our minds are identical. Minds of all sentient beings are identical. The minds can be afflicted or minds could be enlightened. Those are the two kind of settings for our minds, and everything in between, of course. So Bodhisattva engages in the world compassion, and Bodhisattva's engagement in the world is a compassionate activity which unfailingly arises out of wisdom, mind, and laser sharpness, because a Bodhisattva can penetrate through these appearances to see the inner workings of the mind, and can really see that all these seemingly different individuals have these identical features. Bodhisattva looks at us and our dog and sees two same minds. Bodhisattva doesn't look at us as these vastly separated beings. So the 6 paramitas are like the armor the Bodhisattva puts on, and we should put on, in order to perform the vast activity out of the vast intention, the intention that to benefit all our mother sentient beings and to bring them out of suffering to a state of enlightenment. So the first paramita, and that is generosity, dana, number 25, and the verse reads, if it is necessary to give away even one's body while aspiring to enlightenment, what need is there to mention external objects? Therefore, practicing generosity without hope of reciprocation or positive karmic results is the Bodhisattva's practice. There are 2 trainings in the perfection of generosity. Namely, first, we train ourselves to end our own poverty mentality and our habitual stinginess. We cannot really help anyone out of our own neediness. If our mind is needy, forget about helping anyone. So first, we train not to desire beyond what we need. And we train in contentment based on realization that we don't need to die here in samsara chasing after another pair of shoes or a fancy house, certainly not chasing after another million. Those are deluded states of mind. There is no time for these games of ignorance. The impermanent nature of being here keeps us on a very tight schedule in face of death, so we train like hell. We train all the time. We don't stop. When we reach contentment and joy with what we have now, we reach some level of wisdom. Then from that place, and only from that place, we can start giving to others and engaging in real generosity. That generosity has only the motivation to benefit others. If we are thinking of how it benefits us, like a tax break or some kind of reciprocation, they have to thank us, they have to kiss our butt, that's not Bodhisattva generosity. That's ordinary tainted giving. First, we train in what we can give freely without strings attached. That's the generosity training. Don't expect anything back. Do it in the vast and spaciousness of the right intention. Give a bowl of soup for, in the beginning without strings attached. And later, as the practice grows, you can sacrifice your body, because there are stories of the Buddha when he was still, the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, when he was still a bodhisattva. He was training in the bodhisattva ways. He came across a tigress with her pup children, and she was dying of starvation, and the Buddha took a knife and cut off a piece of his thigh and fed it to the tigress. And actually in Nepal there's a stupa erected in that place where that happened, and many beautiful monasteries. But to reach that level takes tremendous amount of training. Eventually, needless to say, it can happen, because we know of beings that sacrifice for us everything, including their life, But we start we start small and we train to go higher and higher. And after all, it's not about what we give, it's how we give it, because it's always about the intention from which the action ensues. Each paramita is always grounded in the right intention. If the intention is something else, then the act is also something else. Train by knowing your limits and overcoming them gradually and skillfully, with each step transforming your mind, because the transformation happens in the mind. Everything that follows, like our hands are giving away money, that is an after effect of mind being transformed. And because mind training and mind transformation as a result of that training is the entirety of the Buddhist path. That's what the Buddhist path really is. It's mind training. We go from ordinary to this extraordinary. Being a Buddhist is training the mind, going from dark, selfish, ignorant mind to luminous mind of benefiting all beings of the Bodhisattva mind level. These are the level states of consciousness. And so we train to always have a more vast and free, unpolluted mind. Free meaning free from ignorance, free from afflictions. As we have three energetic dimensions, we have body, speech, and mind, through which everything happens in life. We give on all these three levels. We give with our body, whatever is necessary to benefit the others. We give with our speech by activating the enlightened quality of speech. We encourage, we pray, and we say kind things to benefit others. And of course, everything comes from our mind, the source, and its condition. The mind moves the body and speech. They're always manifesting as three dimensions, but in unison, because the hands are not working by themselves and the words are not flying out of our body, involuntarily, or they shouldn't, at least. If the mind is like the sun, speech is the brightness and the body is the warmth. So think of it all together, giving light, warmth, and life like the sun. So the paramita of generosity. And maybe we have a little bit time to cover one more.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we have like 15 minutes left, but I want to get to some questions too.
Okay, I'll be quick. So the next paramita is the ethical conduct. In Sanskrit, it's called Shila. And of course, it is also, like all the other paramitas, it's of extreme importance. So verse number 26, if lacking ethical conduct, one fails to achieve one's own purpose, the wish to accomplish others' purpose is laughable. Therefore, guarding ethics, devoid of aspirations for worldly existence, is the Bodhisattvas practice. So Shila, ethical conduct. Again, we train in two methods. Abstaining from unvirtuous activity is one part, and training in virtuous activity, that's part two. That means abstaining from unvirtuous activity, that means we are not getting triggered by the 5 poisons of afflictive emotions. And our mind, our awareness, is not ravaged by the ego and ignorance. We train in giving, not taking. We train our mind. The taking transforms into receiving, but the focus is always on benefiting others and always abstaining from inflicting harm or any negative action. We also remember interdependence, right? The relative truth, interdependence, everything is connected. If we hurt someone, that person feels anger and hate in response. They hurt someone else, etc., etc. Eventually, the links of the chain circle back. And suddenly our child or someone we love gets hurt. And so we suffer the experience the consequence of our initial misdeeds. So remember that. It's like transmitting an airborne virus, pandemic level event. If one knows that one is sick, but goes out and infects others, eventually when most people, or all people get sick, because that's what happens, the virus circles back and makes us sick again. So keeping that in mind, we are experiencing a world level event where we can see the interdependence and interconnection, and how karma, circles back from, from initial source and circles again and again. So we experience the consequence of our misdeeds, karma. So please always guard the mind against any unvirtuous activity. Catch it before it embodies into your speech and into your actions. Catch it before and dissolve it. We also remember, so negative. So please, remember, no negative actions, no polluting the world, not in body, not in speech, and not in mind. And maintaining vigilance and awareness is the Bodhisattva way. It is actually the vow. We take a vow as Buddhists not to incur negative activity and to always maintain, mind of beneficence of others. That's how we break the karma chain, one link at a time. If we break our own karma link, we want to, maybe somebody hurt us, but we don't react. We break the link. The chain will eventually fall apart, one link at a time. So be that link and break the chain.
Can I ask you to just elaborate just for a minute on the difference between ethical discipline, what you're talking about here, which is obviously coming through a Buddhist context, and religious doctrine? Another religion might say having sex if you're not married is wrong. Being gay is wrong. There's religions have doctrinal aspects to it that, to me, go against ethics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you separate? How do you delineate the fact that we're not just introducing another list of doctrine that you have to follow? What is the difference between this kind of ethical behavior and religious doctrine, dogmatic kind of things?
Well, in Buddhism, there are precepts, obviously, but the important thing is, as I said, always the motivation. If our motivation is to benefit others, well, first of all, there are none of these, there's no biblical, there's no text that lists all of these behaviors. Yes, of course, in Buddhism also we have these don't kill, don't steal, don't tell lies, and all these kinds of things.
But actually lies, it's skillful means
means, yes.
Just telling the truth and being honest is not always virtuous or ethical, because it could be hurtful.
Because right? What supersedes, telling the story in a certain way is your intention. Everything always goes back to awareness, to mind. If your intention, and you find it, is to hurt someone, and you go, oh, but I said the truth, that means, right, you just responded to your negative emotion. You reacted on the thing that you wanted to hurt that person. You wanted to stab them. You wanted to bring some kind of a painful event upon themselves. And that can only come from, mind of selfishness, because it made you feel good, to hurt someone. So in Buddhism, ethical behavior means being informed by prajna. It means being informed, having the best intention of benefiting sentient beings, and never being triggered, watching our mind and not being, not acting unvirtuously is watching and knowing our mind and never being triggered, never acting as a response of a negative emotion. And we know what the 5 afflictions are. So if we feel that something is pressed in us, a button is pressed in us, and now I'm about to get angry, don't do it. Or I'm about to get envious, or I'm about to get desires. Don't act on your triggers. Don't react. Act. Stop it, hold it, look at it. It's, after all, it's only a thought. Your anger is only a thought. Your enemy is your anger. It's not that person. It's your anger. It's like inviting cancer inside yourself. The anger hurts you more than it even hurts the other person. It's like inviting fire inside yourself. And so, what it means, virtuous activity is activity based on mind of bodhicitta, mind of love and compassion, and never, ever, ever having your basis in some kind of a reactivity based on on your on the selfish mind, you know, and the 5 negative emotions. That's what it means. You know, it's not about orthodoxy.
Right.
You should pick the right view on your own. Your mind should spontaneously, and the nature of mind will tell you, you know what it's like to hurt someone, because if it came the other way to you, you would know exactly how it feels. So it's not that hard to pick out virtuous from unvirtuous. You simply put yourself into that position, and you know what, no matter what the result is on the outside, just don't engage in unvirtuous behavior. You know, turn around, walk away with compassion before you're triggered and act like an animal.
Right.
You know?
I mean, and besides the obvious things, like you're saying, like obviously don't kill, abuse,
Yeah.
physical abuse, stealing, things like that. Other things, for instance, there's no precept that says you can't eat meat in Buddhism, right? There may be some lineages where that's encouraged, but it's not. The Buddha didn't say no one should ever eat meat and you shouldn't do it. Victoria and I both came to that decision to not eat meat at some point, just out of how our thinking about animals changed. But that's not. It wasn't like a doctrinal thing that said this is bad, this is good, you need to do this because Buddha says. That's not how Buddhism works. But your mind may start to ripen to a place where you decide you want to do that. But so there's a difference there, and a lot of it, like she was saying, it's about where your mind goes, and how, if you start developing these developing love and compassion and these spiritual qualities, how your thinking about the world eventually starts to change.
Yeah, and development is gradual. The Buddhist path is gradual. And I forgot to say in the previous stanza about giving, the greatest generosity, of course, is giving delight to the mind. So that means giving the Dharma, because Dharma is like medicine. It restores the mind, to its pristine state. And so don't incur, again, going back to this point about virtuous and non-virtuous action, the, ethical discipline. The second the second portion of this practice virtuous positive actions. Engage with the world to benefit it without a second thought. Train until it becomes second nature, until virtuous actions arise spontaneously in response to each and every situation. And rejoice that we can act virtuously and that there is an opportunity for us to act virtuously. Treasure that opportunity. That's how we uncover and stabilize our Buddha nature. Virtue will bring true happiness. Just remember that when you have virtuous activity, you don't have residue. There is nothing to regret. And you have a lot of happiness, when you act the right way. But know yourself. Be extremely, extremely honest, and start with where you can and build up from that. Again, as I said, any giving or any virtuous activity has to be by knowing your own limits. But if you do a small deed, but it comes from a very good place, from the right intention, the seed of it is limitless. There is no small virtuous action, because the virtue is never small. The virtue is always vast, as long as it comes from the right place. Even when you give like a tiny little flower to a person, if it comes from the right place, it's like if somebody else gives you the sky.
Thank you. Well, let's go. We'll see if we have any questions we can get to. I don't want to know your opinion on mantra chanting. I have a teacher, Patrick Rinpoche. I've not had the chance to ask him this question. Most of the time, mantra should be given to you through a teacher, because you also need to know why you're saying a mantra. It's like just and a teacher can elaborate on that and give you instruction on why it's beneficial, why you're doing it, why you should do it. There are mantras that don't have to be given to you by a teacher, like the Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the Dalai Lama and mantra, the Chenrezig mantra.
Buddha of compassion.
But you can look that up yourself. To be honest, I think it's good to have some kind of instruction in that. I mean, and that could be through reading a book. If it's a qualified teacher, obviously best always your own teacher. When you do have the chance to ask them that question, I would encourage it.
May I add a little bit to
Yes,
that?
please.
So mantra, the third turning of the wheel, Vajrayana, is also called Mantrayana. Usually, mantra is a part of is activating of the enlightened aspect of speech, but it is given as a part of the teaching because there's always body, speech, and mind. Mantra being just one portion of the practice. Usually it's a practice of visualization of the deity, and you really have to understand. And so to engage in these kinds of practices with the mantras, you usually need the transmission, the lung, and you need the instruction.
What is transmission?
Transmission is when the teacher reads it to you, and and then you need the empowerment. You need those three things. You need transmission, instruction, and empowerment.
What's empowerment?
Empowerment is like the key. The teacher gives you permission to practice that specific practice, but you cannot do it without all those three components because you also need an explanation, and you need a teacher's blessing. So usually mantras are engaged in that context, with exception of, let's say, the Mani mantra.
Yeah, and that's why we don't go into it or elaborate it, because those things,
That's
also
teachers.
to protect the integrity of these teachings in the lineage, that they're not just become just some other
Mundane.
You're taking something that has a very profound, deep roots, to be treated as something just very mundane, like another kind of self-help modality, is goes against, I think, the point and the profundity and the we have lineages going back 2,500 years to Buddha himself, that because these teachers and lineages have kept things very precise and pure that way. So we try to remain faithful to that. Is patience and awareness the key to overcoming those initial triggers, like becoming angry, and ignorant?
May I? Patience is actually one of the paramitas. That's actually the next paramita, is patience. Yes, absolutely. Because first, just like with giving and virtuous activity, we start with ourselves. So we first start with patience with ourselves. Remember, no patience, no focus, no meditation. Absolutely. But we will go into that. We didn't have enough time to go through it today. That's we start the next paramita next week. Yes, absolutely.
As a disciple of Sri Chinmoy, I don't know much about him. I assume he's some Hindu tradition. I promise to be strictly vegetarian and celibate unless married. I was vegetarian for 20 years until a car crash. The nutritionist told me my protein level is low and please eat meat. I did, never went back. Yeah, like I said, Buddhism doesn't have this dictate that you shouldn't eat meat. That you may be a student of a specific teacher that promotes that and thinks that that's better for practice. I mean, if you feel that that's what you need, then that's what you need, and your doctor says it. I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's other ways to get protein, but I mean that might be something. Maybe another nutritionist might tell you can get protein doing something else, and one nutritionist doesn't necessarily have the definitive answer for everything. But if it works for you, it works. It's more about your intention. I mean, what you could do if you are eating meat, you could try to make more of a connection to wherever that's coming from and the being that the meat is from, and making aspirations that whatever that being was had some more positive rebirth, something like that, and establish your connection, karmic connection to this being that is given whatever flesh, and the flesh that you're taking in. You can do that. That could be very effective. When we speak of karma, we often think of the negative repercussions. Are there benefits to positive karmic actions, and how can these help us in our journey to enlightenment? Absolutely. First of all, karma has become, in popular culture, this thing like this kind of cosmic retribution system, and everyone's always happy when something bad happens to somebody bad, and think that's karma. Karma's a bitch, and karma is everything. So karma is cause and effect, causes and conditions. you know, so when we started this class, it was during the election, right? And Donald Trump, a lot of people thought he was doing very bad with coronavirus. And then he got coronavirus, and everyone said, that's karma. And everyone was very, it gave people a lot of, kind of happiness to see that somehow the universe, did this karmic kind of retribution thing. But it also was karma that Donald Trump would be president and be, if you're an American, your president. Your karma is that you live in a country at that time where Donald Trump was president. Donald Trump's karma was also that he would be a billionaire. So you have to understand that everything is karma. Karma meaning everything, karma meaning the cause and effect, causes and conditions that give arising to all phenomena. Everything, even, like if you believe in the Big Bang, which I guess most people do as a theory of the creation of the universe as we know it, everything can be traced cause and effect if you really had the mind and I guess technology and scientific mind to trace everything back eventually to some Big Bang cause and effect. You know what I mean? The evolution, they say, came from species, natural selection and survival of the species, all those things. Everything has a cause and effect, right? I'm sitting on a cushion. Somehow it's my karma to be, have become an actor that people have seen on TV who studies Buddhism and now is doing some meditation classes with you. That's my karma, right? What you have now in this moment. Now, karma is not destiny. Karma is not luck. You have to understand that as well. And in the present moment now, which is really all we have, because the past is gone and the future hasn't happened yet, right? We can't act yesterday, nor can we act tomorrow, because we might not make tomorrow. We might die today. We can only act right now in the moment. The actions you take in body, speech, and mind in this moment now will determine your future karma. That's what you really have to focus on. I'll say that again. The actions you take now in the present, because you can only act now, you can only act in the present, will determine your future, will create the karmic causes and effect for your future.
I'd like to add also that we just covered, ethical conduct, the two portions, abstaining from negative actions, cultivating the positive. Every time we do one or the other, we have imprints that stay with us, and these imprints can be triggered. They arise easier when we've done it many times. Repetitive activities, we go to them, our mind goes to them very quickly. So yes, by cultivating virtuous things over and over, paying attention, giving it mind, having awareness in this activity, will eventually give rise to you always feeling, a state of being mentally present and aware, because that's what positive engagement means. And it will, of course, will create positive conditions as a result, because as Michael said, what we do now activates and determines what is happening later in our life. So needless to say, it's obvious that the good, in the good cause, in the good, virtuous action, is the good result is already in it present. It just will blossom when conditions arise.
There's a very good class in our archives. Vesna Wallace taught about karma. People get sometimes caught up with karma because it goes against justice. Sometimes they feel, right, like because karma can be transferred or the result of prior lives. You know what I mean? If you're born into suffering, into unfavorable conditions, it can often be from prior lifetimes. So like when someone say a child, right, were to get illness, and you said this is an innocent being that doesn't deserve this, why would this happen? Often that kind of suffering can be the resultant of some kind of prior lives. People get very stuck on that because they feel that that's an injustice. But when you start to look at the continuum of consciousness and not just what we are in this life, those things start to make sense. But check out Vesna Wallace's class that she did with us on karma, because she elaborates and goes into it in a lot more, with a lot more knowledge than I have. So does everyone in the US have bad karma for being alive when Trump was president? Yeah, but you don't exclusively have bad. It's just an aspect of karma. You know what I mean? It's not like your karma is bad, period. You have the karma to be born in this, this period of time, 2020 or 2021, being alive at this time with all that entails. That's one aspect of your karma, is that you live in the United States, say. But then you have, that's a collective karma, right? As an American. Then you have your individual karma, which maybe you found someone who you're married to and you're very happy. Maybe you have a job that you like. Maybe you have an illness that's debilitating. Those are personal karma, some of which directly comes from your actions in this life, are resultant of the causes and conditions that you've created in this life, and some comes from residual from past. That's in a Buddhist perspective. As each individual evolves in their own way within the family unit, how do you practice patience with family members, especially when you feel anxious, activated, and triggered when visiting back home? I always say your Buddhist practice and meditation and patience and all these things get, there's no bigger challenge than when you're dealing with your children, your parents, your loved ones, people closest to you. They can push buttons more than anybody. I mean, how do you deal with it? You deal with it exactly how we're discussing, you know what I mean? I mean, there's no different approach. It's just like, what you can do is, when you know that these things push your buttons, you can gird yourself almost and expect your buttons to be pushed and expect these challenges to arise. So you may even amp up your practice, become more aware, say, I really have to be aware when I speak to my father, not to just immediately go to the anger because he says this thing, which he always has said to me, or points out that I look like I'm dressed like a bum, or whatever it is. Be prepared, knowing that these situations are going to push your buttons, bring almost more awareness to the situations.
And you can also really set your mind with an intention to benefit them. In other words, you go into the situation that you predict the outcome is going to be like this and like this, because habitually it's been like this. So your response has been negative, and as a result of some kind of negative action of one of your parents or your children or something like this. But before you engage with them, you set your mind and you say, okay, today I'm going to shift the outcome. I'm not going to expect the negative. What I'm going to do instead, I'm going to turn it into something virtuous. I'm going to have extra patience. I'm going to have extra love. I challenge you to experiment. Bring your practice with you. Don't think that practice happens on the cushion and then in life, stuff just happens, by itself to us. No, it's not like that. What happens to us is our mind. Okay. So if you change your mind, then that's what you practice on the cushion for. So when you get up and you walk into an ordinary situation and deal with people, is you take your experience, meditation, which is an experiential realization of the view. You take that experiential realization of the view and you amp it up and you say, today I'm going to be extra patient. I'm going to be extra loving. I'm going to withstand this wind of this negativity, and I will smile and I will change. And gradually you will, it's like the water chisels away the mountain. You will just have patience and be strong, be determined, decide decisively.
Yeah. Karma is a really big topic, and kind of a difficult one sometimes for people to really digest. Again, Vesna Wallace, Vesna Wallace, gave us a teaching in this class. It's in our archives on YouTube. Meditation with Michael Imperioli on YouTube. Vesna Wallace on karma. She also did a class on emptiness, shunyata. I find it very valuable. Is karma a tool for reflection and knowledge for better action, or is it something else? Well, they say, you know, if you want to look at what your past lives were like and what your past was like, look at your life now. As your life now is the result of causes and conditions that you've created through choices and through your own behaviors, through your own, you know, existence and awareness and lack of awareness throughout, you know, this life and countless others. And if you want to see what your future is going to be like, you know, you have to examine what you're doing at the moment. So in that sense, yeah, it is a reflection, and knowing that, you know, it's up to you what you're going to be in the future. It's up to you and what choices you're going to make. And there is a lot of it under your control in terms of what kind of mind you're going to cultivate. Do you have anything to say on that? Okay. So with that in mind, let's dedicate the merit from today's class for the benefit of all beings by saying our closing prayer. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Nick Solidio, for
Thank you, Nick.
his kindness and generosity. We'll see you next week.